I got my MBA because it was the next step after a bachelor's. And then after that, I planned on getting a PhD because I was Erica Anderson before I got married, and I was the best. And I was going to always be the best. And actually, my mentor in college, when I was looking at finishing up my master's degree, had to do big thesis, comprehensive exams, all of that, right? And we were talking about the next step. And she's like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, obviously, I have to get my PhD. And she said, well, why do you need to get your PhD? Are you going to be a researcher? And I was like, absolutely not. She was like, are you going to teach? And I was like, that's not the plan. She's like, then why are you getting a PhD? Why are you going to spend 3 years of your life and God knows how many thousands of dollars? And I said, so the people can call me doctor. She's like, Erica, that is not a reason. Absolutely not. And it was a real eye-opening moment for me. But I share that story with you because we're going to talk about sticky floors later. But that was a sticky floor of mine, is feeling like I always had to do the best and be the best. And then I had to check all these boxes.
In a corporate world where all employees have great leaders with no egos that create fun cultures where people can do their best work, the employees and companies thrive while doing great things for the customers, themselves, and each other.
Well, we know that rarely happens. I'm Jeff Palacio. I have been a leader for over 40 years for every t-shirt size company, from small 16 employees to extra large over 1 million. Please join me while I interview outstanding leaders that will share stories of great leadership and not so great. It will help you become a better leader while poking fun at all the crazy shit that happens in corporate America.
Hi, I'm Joe Deshawn, and welcome to the Corporate Couch with Jeff Palacio. Today's episode is brought to you by Palacio and Partners, providing turnkey podcast creation, hosting, production, promotion, and related creative resources for you and your business. Today, Jeff is interviewing Erica Rooney. Erica is a keynote speaker who has been featured in Forbes and Success magazines and on CBS News. She has more than 15 years of HR experience, including her role as Chief People Officer in the tech industry. She is an expert in leadership, gender equality, and workplace culture. She is the host of the Glass Ceilings and Sticky Floors podcast, as well as the best-selling author of the book Glass Ceilings and Sticky Floors. You can learn more about Erica at ericaandersonrooney.com. Let's listen as Jeff talks to Erica.
Erica, welcome to the Corporate Couch this morning.
Oh my gosh, Jeff, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great. It's fantastic. I'm going to love today's conversation. We're going to talk a lot about glass ceilings and sticky floors and Verizon and personal training and corporate wellness and how the hell you got to where you're at today. Yeah.
A lot of right turns, a lot of wrong turns.
It's all good.
Loop-de-loops.
Yeah. And I want to know what you did in college at the University of Florida as a Gator and those good stories. Now, yeah, very excited to talk to you. You've a fantastic career, and we got introduced by Britt Frank in Kansas City, and yeah, so very grateful to have met you, and so glad you're going to be on the Corporate Couch. So let's start with a fun question, though. You're pretty transparent out there. You have a book and talk about your own how you survived. You're a sticky floor survivor, but even people that know you fairly well, Erica, what would surprise them about you?
What would surprise so much? Gosh, I think there's a lot that people don't know about me, right? And that is that I think the biggest one is that I really am a homebody and kind of an introvert by nature. I'm one of those introverted extroverts. Like, I get energy from being on stages and being with people, but when I come back from that, I need my time to just totally decompress. Like, I don't want to look at anybody. I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to tell them how it went. I just need to shut everything down. And I don't think I realized that about myself for a long time. So I think a lot of people who know me, especially who know me from my past, might be very surprised by that.
Have you ever done the Myers-Briggs assessment in terms of, are you an E or an I?
I'm still an E. Yeah. I am still an E, but I just need a much larger refractory period almost
Yeah, yeah,
to recover from that.
yeah. I kind of get that. I'm an E also, but I definitely do get that in terms of, when you go to like a national sales meeting at a company and it's just, you're 15 hours of being on, right? People are asking
Yeah.
you questions and you're just
Performing.
you're dealing, yeah, and it's like, oh, and yeah, you come back from one of those and it's like, yeah, give me some you know, shelter.
I just need to chill. Yeah, quiet,
Yeah.
a padded room,
Exactly, exactly. Uh, Erica, where'd you grow up, and what was fun for you as a child growing up? What you love doing?
So I grew up in Gainesville, Florida. Yes, home of the University of Florida. And, I think it's so interesting because I grew up in a university town, right? There was nothing going on outside of the university. So when the students would leave, it would be completely and totally dead. And it was so fun though, because I grew up going to the Gator games, all kinds of Gator games, right? Volleyball games, gymnastics games, football games. Like there
Wow.
was always something fun and incredible to do. And when that is the only thing in your town, like everybody bleeds orange and blue. So you just
Yeah,
love it.
yeah,
But growing up in Florida, I was an outside girl. So I
yeah.
was playing in the creeks and running around, totally different, I think, from a lot of the way kids live today. But I was outside till the streetlights came on,
Wow.
And then when I moved to college, it was just right up the road.
Right. Interesting. Interesting. Did you date anyone from the University of Florida while you were in high school?
While I was in high school, not while I was in high school, no.
Okay. Yeah,
But you
I'm
saw
not
I
going
had
to
to
ask
think
about
about that,
college.
though. You saw I had to think about that.
Just thought I ask. So, any aspirations as a child, like you wanted to be an astronaut or a CEO or a police officer? Any aspirations?
Oh, this is going to crack you up, but it just speaks to my upbringing. I grew up wanting to be a Florida football coach,
Wow.
like the head Florida football coach. Don't
Wow.
At that age, I also did not know the game of football either, but I just thought that was the coolest job.
Yeah. So you go across the street to college. I saw you graduated with a BS in health education. Was that your initial major, or did you change? And what was your impetus
Oh
behind
my
picking
gosh.
health education?
My initial major was nursing. I was going to be a nursing major because my mom was a nurse and that was a great steady job and there was a lot to do. And I just didn't know what to do, but I knew I wanted to help people.
Right.
And, you have career counselors and different paths in the first couple of years, as long as the courses are so general, it can really fit any major. But I remember at one point having a conversation with an academic advisor and really just coming to the grips that I don't love blood and guts, right? And if I'm going to be a nurse, that's a pretty big piece of the puzzle here.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, what can we do? And so they introduced me to health education and behavior. And that has so many aspects and components to it, right? It has community health, it has worksite health, it has, your own personal health, family health. There's so many different avenues to it. And so I thought, okay, that sounds interesting, right? And I signed up and I started taking the courses, and I was in one worksite wellness class. And they had a local gym send in their personal trainers to this worksite wellness class because we all had to take anatomy and physiology in this major. And they were looking for people to apply to be a personal trainer at their gym. They said, you don't have to be a personal trainer before. Like, you just have to take the exam. We'll mentor you. We'll get you there. You just have to have the right attitude. And I'm a hustler. Like, I've always worked several jobs. And I remember thinking this job is perfect because it pays better than 95% of the other jobs. I have flexibility with my schedule, so I get to pick and choose when to accept clients, and I get a free gym. Like, why would I not do that, right? I get paid to work out. Amazing. So I applied for that job and I got it. And all of a sudden I was a personal trainer going to
Wow.
school and, training before and after my classes. And it was fun. I got to help people. I got to work out in the gym. I met so many new people. It was really that first job for me that had a real sense of responsibility, right? A lot of the other things I had done had been babysitting and house sitting and odd jobs for family friends and stuff. But this was like, you've got clients, you were in sales, you were doing all the things. And what really worked out well for me is at the University of Florida, in the major that I was in, you had to do an internship to graduate. And I was like, okay, so I actually found that Verizon had an internship as a corporate health and wellness intern, and I'd have to relocate, but I would go to their business where they had this full gym on site for all of the employees. And your job as the intern is to help fill in, help run health education programs, do personal training, teach group exercise classes, all of that stuff. So it perfectly fit in with my major. And I was like, this is amazing. And I just so happened to get on their website and I saw they had an application in Greenville, South Carolina. Now, randomly, my mother had moved to Greenville, South Carolina for 1 year. So I was like, perfect. I got a spot to live. So this would be great if they hire me. Good news is the person who leads that gym needed someone who was a personal trainer already, who knew what they were doing because she was about to go on maternity leave. So I was a no-brainer. So I slid right on into there and did my corporate wellness internship. Still had to go back to the University of Florida to get my master's degree because I was doing a combined program where I finished my bachelor's and my master's in 4 years. And so I went back, finished that, and then basically hounded my boss at the time for a job at Verizon after I got my master's degree.
Wow, that's fantastic. Now, were you a big workout person prior to getting your personal?
No. And that's what's so funny. Like, not at all. I did not lift weights. Like, I didn't run. I was a cheerleader in high school for 1 year.
Yeah.
Cheerleading is a sport. But after that, like, I didn't do organized sports. I didn't do anything. So it was I don't want to say it was out of character for me, but it definitely wasn't. People weren't like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So they were definitely like, oh, this is interesting. This is an interesting turn for you, Erica, but okay.
Oh man, this is so good. I love it.
I was a personality hire. What can I say?
Oh my God, that is so good. I usually ask people why did they get their MBA, because especially right after college. So you already answered that, and I also ask people how they get their first job. But you always because I'm always curious.
It's one of those things. But I'm going to tell you this, Jeff. Why did I get my MBA is probably not the answer you think.
Okay, give it to me.
I got my MBA because it was the next step after a bachelor's. And then after that, I planned on getting a PhD because I was Erica Anderson before I got married, and I was the best. And
Nice.
I was going to always be the best. And actually, my mentor in college, when I was looking at finishing up my master's degree, had to do big thesis, comprehensive exams, all of that, right? And we were talking about the next step. And she's like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, well, obviously I have to get my PhD. And she said, well, why do you need to get your PhD? Are you going to be a researcher? And I was like, absolutely not. She was like, are you going to teach? And I was like, that's not the plan. She's like, then why are you getting a PhD? Why are you going to spend 3 years of your life and God knows how many thousands of dollars?
Right.
And I said, so the people can call me doctor. She's like, Erica, that is not a reason. Absolutely not. And it was a real eye-opening moment for me. But I share that story with you because we're going to talk about sticky floors later.
Yeah.
But that was a sticky floor of mine, is feeling like I always had to do the best and be the best. And then I had to check all these boxes, right?
Right.
There was no need for me to get my master. Like, I probably could have stopped before my master's degree,
Right.
honestly. But they had that great program for me they allowed me to take master level classes as an undergrad, and they counted for both. So it was great. I would never change it or take it back.
Right.
I don't know. It'd still be nice if somebody had to call me doctor.
You get better tables at restaurants too when you make the reservation.
Right. You just automatic credibility too, anywhere you go.
So I'm assuming you had a high GPA in high school and college based on, there you go.
Yes. And I mean, you live in Florida. I mean, they have the Sunshine State Scholarship, which, if you have a certain GPA, certain volunteer hours, certain SAT scores, they'd pay 100% of your tuition.
Oh, wow.
So college was a dream for me.
Wow.
I mean, I say that carries also a lot of privilege, right? Like that I had the financial means to go.
Sure.
It was not crazy as expensive as it was back then. I did take out a few loans, but nothing like what you have to see today.
Yeah. Go to Verizon, incredible. You're kind of heading up the health and wellness team, at least regionally. It looked like you were responsible for about 12 health and wellness centers. There were 36 fitness coordinators and 15,000 employees using those centers. What was that experience like, and what were your kind of key learnings?
God, what a great first job, you know?
Yeah.
Like, what a cool, it would even still be a fun job today, right? Except for I do love working from home, and you can't work from home in that job. But, I got to wear yoga pants to school. I was young and I was interacting with everybody, right? Like anyone that wanted to come in and work out, anyone that wasn't coming in, like my performance was also based on membership stats. So I really quickly, like, learned that it wasn't just about showing up and like doing a great spin class and having the high energy, but it was also about maintaining our sales numbers, right? Maintaining our stats, even though it was free for them to join at that time. At one point, we did add in like $15 a month out of your paycheck to incentivize people who paid it to actually use it. So we could have actual numbers. But sales was a big piece of it. I mean, I learned so much. That was my first job as a manager, right? Learning how to lead people, learning how to lead people remotely too. And that was before that was even a thing.
Right.
Because I only had one physical person who was with me outside or in my gym. And then all the other gyms were all over the Southwest region. But I loved working for them as a first job because it was such a big organization. I mean, Verizon is, huge. Everybody knows Verizon.
Right.
And they are very much on the tech curve, right? They're always investing. No, I cannot fix your phone for you. That's the one answer. I have no knowledge about phones and technology. But it was really cool to see how a company that large, when I'm coming from college, right? Like has their HR department, they have their finance, their IT, how their executives work. It really taught me, I think, very early on a lot about the political climates that exist with inside corporate America. And I don't think anybody talks about that or teaches that to
Right.
people coming out of college of like, you need to be able to learn the landscape, right?
Right.
You need to be able to quickly align with the right people.
Yeah.
But yeah, what a fun job.
Yeah, it's interesting too because what I mentor recent college graduates, navigating their first, post-college job search and starting their career. And what tell them, I go, there's no wrong choices at companies. Like with a big company like the Verizons out there in the world, you're going to get, you're going to do a very specific role. But you're going to be, you'll have a ton of training in that role or options that, learn other things. And then you can go outside of where you get originally hired and do different in departments and functions. I go, if you go
I got to
for
tell
it-
you this story, Jeff.
Yeah, go.
Verizon still has a ton of employees in the union, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You don't see the union down here in the South,
Right.
And so I didn't know
Right.
anything about a union, but every
Right.
4 years the contract comes up.
Oh, yeah.
And so when the contract comes up and the workers go out on strike because they do it every year,
Yeah.
guess who gets assigned to be what some people call a scab?
Yes. Managers. Yeah. People, the
Yep.
exempt employees
shipped
get the.
out. Yep, I got shipped out to Andover, Massachusetts,
Oh,
right?
wow.
Lived
Wow.
in a hotel room working 13-hour days.
Yeah. Hopefully not in the
as
winter.
Oh God, I can't even. No, it was not the winter, thank God. But it was 10 years ago. This was when I was on strike, right? I had to cross the picket line. I sold FiOS, right? Do you think a young little 25-year-old even knew what FiOS was back then? They asked one time, my then manager was like, Erica, tell me what FiOS is. And I was like, it's like really great cable. She's like, absolutely not. This is why you're not selling shit. Like, this is no. So, yeah, the benefits for working for a large company is you can get real dialed in and become real niche real quick.
Yeah.
But usually those companies, they want you to grow and expand and they want you to be that versatile player. So they will
Yeah.
take you into the project management team and they will take
Yeah.
you into the IT team. And there's just so many different things you can navigate. I've looked back at a lot of my old colleagues who were on my team way back in the day. Not many of them are still in the health and wellness role, but many of them are still within Verizon, just
Yeah.
doing project management or software
Sure.
support. So you get that ability to, shift around and you get really great benefits.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I had a similar. I worked for AT&T out of college in their IT organization, and I think the second year I was there, CWA, Communication Workers of America, the union went on strike, and I worked 14 straight days from midnight to noon, hanging tapes in the computer. I was computer operations. And oh man, I could remember going. This is very personal, but I remember going to the bathroom, like 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and just sitting on the toilet with my fully clothed and just hanging my head just so I
Hiding.
could close my eyes.
Hiding for 1 minute. Yes, 1 minute apiece.
But they paid time and a half to be, it was, it was good money, and they fed us at the end of our
Yep.
shifts.
Oh my God. They put us up in the hotel. They fed us.
Yeah.
So we had breakfast and lunches served. We just had to find our dinners, but they paid for it. I mean, at the time I was single, no kids. And so it was amazing because I didn't have much to worry about. So for me, it was very simple to just go up there.
Yeah.
But I remember I was crossing the picket line one day and somebody was yelling at me and they were like, "Your husband hates you." And I was like, "Oh my God, you know who he is?" Because I was still single. It was so funny. I was like,
oh my God.
and I feel for him. I know better now, right? They were just stressed out. They're doing what they had to do. But back then I'm like, who is this?
Yeah. That is so funny. That's so funny. So what was the, you were there about 7.5 years at Verizon. What was kind of the pull to go to your next company? I think it was Thrive. And that everything's relative in terms of company size, but obviously it looked like it had about 1,500 employees. So that's small compared to Verizon, but still a pretty large company. So what was your
This is probably one of the most pivotal moments in the career journey, because that was when I shifted really from health and wellness into HR, right? Because health and wellness has a very low ceiling. Unless you are trainer to Oprah, right? Or Post Malone, you're not going to be making money hand over fist. Your ceiling is very limited. And I remember hitting that ceiling very early on and thinking I'm supposed to retire in my 60s. I don't know, right? Because in my 20s, I don't know when you retire. I'm like, so I'm just going to have this job and this role and this salary for the next, 30, 40 years. Right. I was like, there's no way. I can't do that. And I had also just had my first child, right? And so that first career, I had to be in the office from, I think it was 6 to 2 or 11 to 7, right? Wow. So we alternated our shifts because it's a gym. Early morning, you got to open it up before people go to work, which when you look at it on one side of the coin, which I did before kids, I was like, this is amazing. 3 days out of the week, I'm home by 2 o'clock. I'm an early bird anyway. And I really didn't like the later shifts because I'm a morning person, right? Then when I had kids, those days where I was home at 2 o'clock, yes, I liked it because I was home early and I had more time with him, but I didn't see him until 2 o'clock because he was sleeping when I left for work.
Right.
And so I started to get those pulls on my heartstring of I can't keep doing this for my whole life, right? With my kids, not seeing them half of the mornings of the week.
Right.
And so I started to ponder, what could I do next? And so I went out and I got my project management certification, my PMP, because my husband was a project manager. And I was like, why not? Threw that at the wall to see if it would stick. Passed the certification, by the way, but I'm no project manager. Let me be clear. Then I took an HR certification because I was like, okay, health and wellness, benefits, helping people. Right. And this is where you see that red thread coming through. Yeah. And that's when I really started also doing a little bit more introspection on who is Erica Rooney? What lights me up now that I'm a mom, now that I've hit my first ceiling, I've gotten my feet wet in corporate. And it was that I loved helping people. So that switch from Verizon into this HR job was really pivotal because it tied that red thread through, right? Two very different industries.
Right.
And the reason I went with Thrive was because I probably applied for about 100 different jobs, right? And I interviewed a lot. I remember I interviewed for Cisco one time remotely 3 days after giving birth to my son, because I just wanted in, and I was getting to the final, but then not the pick because I had no true HR experience.
Right.
When you go in at a smaller company, they can take that on and they can train you. They are more likely to do that than the bigger jobs, right? Than the bigger Verizons. And so when I did get hired at this company, it was fantastic because it was a smaller company. I got my hand in every single pot that is HR, because HR is a very complex beast, right? There's employee benefits, there's employee relations, there's onboarding, there's retirement, there's just so many aspects that you can either be a generalist and be broad, or you can niche way down, right?
Yep.
And so I got to understand every aspect of recruiting at a very high level. And then I was able to drill down into the pieces that I loved after I left that company. So I stayed with nThrive, I don't know, maybe 2-ish, 3-ish years, something like that. They were originally a Dreama that was acquired by nThrive. And I left right around the acquisition time because we had some leadership changes.
Right.
But from there, this is where I had like a little blip, it was a very like corporate game of chess, and that I had an offer in hand from one company to get out of nThrive. And at that point, I wanted to get out because of the acquisition. But I had also been networking like a mofo on the back end for this other amazing company that focused on diagnostics and medical devices and all of that. And I thought that was so cool. But dang if they weren't dragging their feet, right? In hindsight, I can look back and tell you all the things, right? But knowing what I knew then, and it was like, this is my opportunity to take this job to get out of the acquisition. And it was great. It was close to my house. They paid me great money. I loved the people that I worked with. It was private equity, so it was a little different. And so I was learning new things about how does the world operate from a PE standpoint versus like publicly traded companies. And I got to handle a lot of different portfolios that had all different benefit plans. So again, it was just more experience, more tools in the toolbox. And then behind the scenes, that other company that I really wanted to be with, they finally got back to me. And here's why it took so long. It's because the French don't really work in the summer. They take all of August off.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that at the time. So I'm over here, and so then I felt so bad, but because I'd only been there for 6 months. And so I had to leave, and I transferred over, to the newer company, which was called Be a Marry You. And then after I finished my full day at Be a Marry You, I would go back to the other company and I would help them train the person they found to then replace me.
Wow.
Because I just felt like that was the right thing to do. You know, I didn't want to just leave them in a total lurch. It was a smaller company. It was private equity. Like there's not big systems in place. A lot of it was manual HR. So it just felt like it was my responsibility to set that person up for success.
Are you drowning in boring corporate communications? Palacio and Partners is here to rescue you. We transform internal podcasts from snooze fest to must-listen content that actually connects your team and strengthens your culture. Imagine podcast episodes that make your employees laugh while staying informed. Our founder, Jeff Palacio, doesn't just create podcasts, he creates conversations that break through the noise. Whether you're a growing startup or a massive corporation, we turn your company's story into audio gold. Leadership becomes human. Remote teams feel connected. Your message cuts through the clutter. Palacio and Partners, where corporate communications gets a fun makeover. Let's make your podcast work harder than your email inbox ever could. Jeff is happy to share his insights on podcasting with you. You can contact him via LinkedIn or schedule a Zoom call via the link in the episode description.
You go from like an HR business partner, your first HR role. I mean, obviously health and wellness is part of the kind of HR umbrella, but kind of, the kind of core functions of HR in this smaller company. And you have this rapid, and I know you're a goal-oriented person and all that, but I mean, you basically go from an HR business partner to look like you were the chief people officer, in about 4 or 5 years. So is that the strategy for you? Like once I'm in HR, I'm going to be the CPO of HR.
It really wasn't, and I never really thought that would be me, if I'm honest. Like I thought it would be cool, but when I looked at people like chief people officers, my brain automatically went to like Verizon's chief people officer.
Right.
So for me, that was so big and so unattainable. It just wasn't even in my realm of thought, right?
Yeah.
I was just always going after the next best thing.
Right.
But I'm very big on just knowing when you need to go, right? I think a lot of people hang on in corporate jobs for far too long. They either think it's going to get better, they're really hopeful for a change, within the company, they don't want to do the work to interview. Like there's all those limiting beliefs that cause people to not apply.
Yeah.
When in reality, sometimes the next best step is out, right? And
Yeah.
I was very good at reading the political landscape and just taking action, right? Like if I could sense that like the politics were shifting in the workplace and like this wasn't necessarily going to be the place for me, then I needed to go.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a very real example. Like when I was at my medical diagnostics company, BMRU, I mean, I will say nothing about them except for amazing things. They truly give back to the community. They give back to their people. Like I loved working for them. And I had a mentor and an advocate who really supported my growth. And like I was on a path to be a regional VP of HR. And in fact, I interviewed with the CEO of the company and the global VP of HR. And I made it to the very final rounds, which was quite shocking for me because my direct manager also applied. So it was very crazy, right?
Right.
Like I was up against my direct manager. And here we are making it to some of the final rounds. And I was being invited to executives' homes for dinners with their families and with court. Like it was rolling, right?
Yeah. Wow.
But then there was a change of power and there were some internal moves around. And a person who was in my advocate's position moved into a different role in the company that did not have the same level of pull or authority over my group anymore, right? It was a different area, which was great for him. But the person who came in didn't necessarily advocate for me in the same way, right? And I just started seeing these little signs, and the trajectory that I once had to be the VP of HR, the regional VP of HR, was kind of being pulled back. Now, I could have stayed there. They actually offered me another really great regional business partner role. But I just knew my time was up.
Right.
You know, I read the political landscape and I had to really quickly evaluate, like, is it best for me to stay and do the work, right? Which could have been an option, or would it be more productive and easier for me to do this work elsewhere? And that's what I did.
You think working at Verizon and obviously helping people in all different functional areas, finance, IT, sales, marketing. Do you think that helped you kind of read the political landscape at companies, just because you had such vast exposure to different organizations?
I do think that really helped, because my very first job was with very senior executives, and my very last job as chief people officer, the executives there were not nearly as seasoned as the ones at Verizon, right? Two totally different companies, two totally different sizes, two totally different ball games.
Yeah.
Both are great, right? But having that direct exposure, learning how to read the room when I didn't have a voice, like that was a very big, I think, launch pad, because when I got put in every other room after that, I already knew how to read the room.
Right. So it looks like you started ERA Advisors while you were still a W-2 employee. So kind of what was your kind of thought process there? And did you have the book in mind when you started ERA Advisors in February 2020?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not, right? Like, here's the thing, and it's the theme of my life, is that I don't know what's next, but I just know I need to do things, and I need to know that I need to take action, even if I don't really understand why. And as a chief people officer, I am at the top of this career ladder. I'm in my 30s, and I had this pivotal moment of like, okay, what is that next step for me? Because I'm so growth focused, right? And it's like, well, I guess the next step is just taking another CPO role at a bigger company and then just continuing to grow and grow and grow until I'm chief people officer of Verizon, right? But I just wasn't happy doing it anymore. Like, we'd been through the COVID, I'd been in the tech boom, like where e-commerce was just popping off. And I had noticed that instead of being lit up when people would Slack me or email me or, hey, call me with a problem, it was more of this feeling of like, oh God, what do they want now? Right. And I was just feeling my energy drain and drain and drain. And so that's when I kind of went back to just what I did at Verizon, where it was throwing shit at the wall to see what stuck. Right. And so if you remember, I threw it out there, got a PMP, didn't do anything with that. Right. But put it on my resume.
You have a ton of certifications.
Right. Hey, let's learning, right? So then when I felt that same kind of like pang of I'm not learning, I'm not growing, what should I be doing? I was like, let me just take this executive coaching certification, right? Like it'll at least help me with my job, you know?
Sure.
So I took this coaching certification, literally only thinking that it would help me with my job. And part of earning that certification was that I had to do some pro bono hours. So I went onto Facebook, I went to a Working Moms of Peloton group, and I just said, hey, I need some pro bono coaching hours. I'm looking for, I think it was 3 women who will meet with me over however many months. And that's what I want to do. Right. Now, keep in mind, I was working that full time chief people officer role. So, where in the world am I going to fit these sessions into my calendar? Right. Because I'm also a mom with 2 little kids.
Right.
So it was very busy. And I was, having weekend sessions and late night sessions and things that I would not normally do. I'm not a nighttime person and I don't like working on the weekends.
Right.
But I was doing it because after I did that first session, and like, let me tell you, the first session with the first person leading up to it, I'm kind of annoyed because it's like, okay, I've had to fit this in my day. It's the end of the day. I don't really want to do it. I'm also uncomfortable because I don't know what I'm doing. I haven't done a session yet on
Right.
my own. So all of these feelings, and I show up and I do the session and it flies by and I hang up and I just can't stop smiling. I can't ignore the fact that it's now 7 o'clock at night, which I'm usually getting ready for bed. And I am so flippin' jazzed up. Like I'm just excited. I'm bouncing off the walls. Oh my gosh, this was so much fun.
Right.
And because of how lit up I was after those coaching calls, it really illuminated for me how unhappy I was in the chief people officer role.
Right.
And that's when I kind of started thinking about it from a business perspective of like, if I am truly this lit up, and I started doing the research and figuring it out. And I'm not one of those people to go like cold turkey on things. So I wasn't going to jump up and quit my job. I wasn't going to do anything like that, but I did want to start taking steps. And so I opened up the LLC, right? I started the podcast. I kept the podcast going. Then I started taking some paying coaching clients because they were just coming to me, and I put them in
Right.
on the weekends. They were fun. It was like my
Right.
hobby.
Right.
And then it just kind of grew and grew and grew until it got to the point where I was having to take PTO to like go do keynotes. And it was like, okay, I think we're at a place now where we can, take off these very beautiful but very painful golden handcuffs and just go all in on you. And that's what I
Wow.
did.
Yeah, that's incredible. I want to get back to that, but since you brought it up, and you're a former chief people officer, what are your thoughts on, now we're post-COVID, now it's been, almost 5 years since March of 2020 when,
Yeah.
the shit hit the fan. What are your thoughts on return to work and companies' policies in that area? Just curious.
I don't think you should force anybody to come back to work. I think for 5 years they showed you that they could do it outside of the office. And as long as that is working, that's not to say that's not for everybody, right? Some people need to get out of their house. They need to thrive in that office environment.
Right.
So I think you have to be flexible, right?
Yeah.
If you want top talent, you have to have that as a benefit, right? That you get to dictate your schedule, where you work, all of that. And I am a huge believer that we will start to see a lot of organizations shift away from like this is your job description type performance to more of an outcomes type performance.
Right.
Because Jeff, if both you and I get hired as a chief people officer, but you are incredibly efficient at 5 out of the 10 tasks that we have to do, right? You finish, I don't know, 3 hours ahead of me. So are you just supposed to sit there at your desk because I take longer and you're better at your job than I am? Like, absolutely not.
Right.
And I'm very transparent with people. Like, I am a very productive and efficient person. Like, what I get done in the day before my husband even wakes up is what most people do in a week, So I got a lot of stuff done after I got my chief people officer job done. And when COVID hit and I didn't have to commute or like get dressed for an office, that was even more free time for me. So it's like how you utilize your time. I think we're going to start seeing companies shift more towards that.
Yeah, and I totally agree with you. And I just think it's crazy. Like a lot, the flow is going back to 5 days a week and return to office. And I'm like, why? Like what's you just we just showed
I
you don't need to, right?
I think it just shows you that people, I think if something is not working for them, it's very easy to point the finger and say it's because we're not in the office, right? We're not
Right.
collaborating.
Right.
There are so many tools in which we can collaborate these days.
Right.
You know, text messages, voice notes, WhatsApp, Slack, FaceTime. Like,
Yeah.
you want to tell me you can't
Right.
collaborate? And so for me, it's more of an excuse than actually looking at the true health of your business and what's going on.
Right. Right. So you started doing the podcast about when?
Probably 2020,
Okay.
maybe 2021.
And was it always called Glass Ceiling, Sticky Floor? Okay.
No, I started it off as the podcast. I called it From Now to Next because I was going to get you from where you are now to where you want to go next.
Yeah, love it.
And I did guest episodes and I used to do singular episodes, and the singular episodes were intended to be stepping stones to your next level.
Yeah.
But when I started writing the book and I really kind of honed in on that messaging of the glass ceilings and the sticky floors, it was like, I've got to align these.
Yeah. So, one, I love the title of the book. It's so good. So when did the book idea come into your mind, and what was your writing process?
So it starts because I read a book called Change Enthusiasm by Cassandra Worthy. And she's a keynote speaker, ex-corporate girl, very similar, kind of story with me and acquisitions and all of that. But I read her book and I thought, this is such a good book. I'm going to reach out to her. I've never reached out to an author in my life. I read a lot of books. This has never hit me it's never hit me before that. And it hasn't hit me after of I've got to reach out to this person. So I reached out to her and she graciously took my call and we were just talking. And I said, I have this podcast and this is what I'm doing. And she was the one who introduced me to the world of keynote speaking and how that's actually a business and a true revenue stream if you treat it like one. And I had no idea. Even though I had been in HR and I had paid people tens of thousands of dollars to come speak, it never dawned on me that that was a whole business, right? So it took her saying that to me and I thought, wow, that's so interesting. She's like, yeah, and why don't you write a book while you're at it? And I'm like, you have lost your damn mind, right? But she planted the seed, and because that seed was planted, I kept having my podcast conversations with women and I started noticing that they were all funneling into these different categories. Perfectionism, imposter syndrome, worrying about what other people will think.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, that's a lot like chapters of a book.
Right.
And then it's like, huh. Yeah. And then I have been a part of a speaker community for a couple years, and they do talk about the credibility of having a book. When you are a speaker and you have a book and you've gone through that process, it's like getting that PhD I never got, Right. And so I was exposed to it more and more, and I just started writing. I had already had all these blogs up on my website, and I started with who the book was for. I was like, who is this book for? It was for me 10 years ago, how do we get through corporate America as a woman, as a mother? How do we navigate all this without losing our minds? Right.
Right.
And then I was like, well, this is perfect. I don't even have to interview anybody because I have all these podcasts,
Right.
So then I just went back to all of my podcasts and I was able to pull all of the experiences of the women and couple them up with a framework that I have to help women move beyond their sticky floors that keep them stuck. But what I will tell you, Jeff, is one thing I am so thankful of is I wrote the entire book before working with a publisher, which is not the right way to do it, apparently, but it's the way I did it. And, again, I didn't know you had to do a whole publisher outline, this, that, and the other.
Right.
So I wrote my whole book and presented it to the publisher. And they were like, well, how many words is it? And they're like, no, that's a whole book. And they were like, okay, well, let's talk about it. And, I went the route of hybrid publishing, which is different. There's traditional publishing, which is like Penguin Random House, where you pitch the book, they pay you. Hybrid is a little bit different. It's almost like you pay them to project manage your book. So it is a hefty fee for them to find the editor, do the art, take through the whole process.
Right.
If I had not written that book and I just saw the quote, I'd have been like, yeah, that's okay. I don't need to write a book. That's a lot of money.
Right.
But because I had already written the book and then they showed me the quote, I said, but I can't let this book just sit on my laptop.
Right.
Like I spent hours writing these chapters,
Yeah.
doing research. I bought so many books. I did highlight. What? And so it was like a no-brainer for me, even though it was really hard, like from a financial decision. I was like, oh my gosh, I got to do it though.
Yeah, I forget. I went on Amazon before our call, and it's fantastic. I mean, I think you have over 100 reviews, or it's some high number, and it's 5 stars.
5 stars.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, so
Thank
yeah,
you.
and I read a bunch of the reviews. What was your own personal experience with the glass ceilings and sticky floors? Because I know you talk about it in the book.
So many, right? So when I think about glass ceilings, I think about it as twofold, right? There's the traditional glass ceilings at work that we know about, where women and other minorities bump their heads up against it when they're dealing with getting a promotion or a pay increase, right? But then there's our own ceilings that we place over what we think is possible. I'm never going to be the owner of a multi-million-dollar company. I'm not going to be a C-level leader, right? I could never be the person who runs a marathon. We all have those things, right? So when I think about it twofold like that, number one, I never thought I would be a C-level leader. I just didn't think that that was something that would happen to me as a woman. I don't know. It was just not in my psyche. And so for me, that was the first, both like sticky floor internal ceiling that I had, but also real external ceiling. And I did not have a problem getting into the C-suite, right? I was very fortunate in that I had a very progressive mentor in that company that brought me on. He saw the value of all of it, but that's not to say I didn't have to fight for a lot of what I deserved. And so, for example, I was brought in as a senior vice president, right? Great title. It was a great step for me. Loved it. Senior vice president. And I was part of the executive team. So even though most of my peers were C-level leaders, it was myself and somebody else who was like a SVP of something, So 2 SVPs, a lot of C-level leaders. Then, because I'm the head of HR, I have to internally approve all promotions and all things like that. And my male counterpart, who was on the executive team, but also an SVP, was being promoted to a C-level leader position. Why am I not being promoted to a C-level leader position? And, I put it on there and I said it to my boss. I added my name to the promotion list. I just took the liberty. I put my name on there.
Right.
And he said, but why? And I said, let's talk about my roles and responsibilities in the scope. I said, I am HR. I am over this entire company. And I am the only person not on this executive team that does not have a C-level title. I said, I'm also the youngest and I'm female. I said, but this other guy right here who only has a division, you're ready to promote to a C-level title. Can you explain to me the difference? And it was just one of those, like, again, he is a very progressive supporter of women, but he was like, holy shit, no, you do deserve to be on there. My bad, right? Like we all have those internal biases we're not even aware of, So I did have to call it out in scenarios like that. Like I was, what do they call it? Mansplained to so many times.
Right.
With some of the most basic information. And it was like, okay, would you say that to a male counterpart? So I did experience a ton of that. And then also we were acquired by a company that was based out of India. Culturally, they treat women a lot differently than we do here in America.
Right.
So then I'm going over to India and having to deal with all of that over there, right? So absolutely a million systemic, right?
Yeah.
Glass ceilings.
Yeah.
And then internally, I never thought I'd be of that level. I never thought I would make that kind of money. I never thought I would go out on my own. I never thought I had to have the confidence to do what I'm doing now. I never thought I would have the brain power to do what I'm doing now. Like, I think, in the beginning, you asked me, like, what would people be surprised about? And I think part of it is, like, I come across very confident, very sure, just boom. But there's a lot in me that questions what I'm doing. Is it good enough? Are people going to like it? Is it going to resonate? There's a lot of that just bubbles up all the time. Yeah. I just get really good at taming that beast.
We're talking here on January 22nd, 2025. What's kind of Erica's big goals and what you want to achieve this year?
I am so excited. Today is actually a really exciting day because I launched a digital online community for women to help them amplify their voices and empower themselves to climb the corporate ladder without losing their sanity, right? Without sacrificing their success.
Right.
And today is our founders kickoff call.
Oh, wow.
So we are having our very first ever group coaching call, but it is such a cool platform. I've got women who are just entering the workforce all the way to the C-level who are just wanting to come together and combine their powers. Like that's what I'm seeing already. And so they've been inside the community, they've been interacting. But my huge goal for 2025 is just to grow those founding members into a thriving community of women who are diverse, who are all over the globe. That is my goal, and I want to continue to do that through the work of the book and the podcast and all of those things. But the biggest thing is, and it's called Her Collective. So the biggest thing is Her Collective.
Oh, wow. That's exciting. That's exciting. And who are the people that you're trying to help? I know you call yourself a coach consultant versus
a
consultant.
Coach consultant.
Yeah,
yes.
I love that. But kind of who are the main people you can help, whether that's your keynote or your coaching?
Oh my gosh. So many ways I can help. And that's what I love. It's because I tell people I'm everything you need and just what you need. But I can come into your organization, do one-on-one coaching with your executives or key leaders or people you just want to train up. I can come into your company and do corporate sessions where we're training managers and talking to them about how to be an authentic leader and how to lead through uncertainty. I did a really great keynote the other day on change, right? And trusting the process. So I can really speak to so many people. My passion is speaking with women, right? Talking to them about shattering their own internal beliefs, busting through the glass ceilings so that they can truly live the life they deserve. From a coaching perspective, same thing. Like those women are my key demographic, but I will tell you this was a light bulb moment for me, Jeff. I was working with a new CEO on a different keynote and I was like, man, he would be so fun to coach. Right. I don't coach men. I only coach women. You know who I coach? I coach ambitious people who want to grow. Right. And so if you're just an ambitious person who wants to grow, who like gets people, then I'm your girl. But absolutely. And then if you're like, you know what, I'm not ready for all that. That's why Her Collective is so great, is because it's digital, it's online. You can participate as much or as little as you want, but it is that space for you.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. There's two groups of people I'd love to help in the podcast, and we've kind of touched on the first group is that recent college graduate. They just graduated. Now they're trying to get their first professional job and start their professional career. What advice would you have for them, Erica?
Oh my gosh, focus on your network. Growing and expanding your network across industries, across the state lines, right? Utilize LinkedIn because your network is your net worth. And then get as much experience as you can in the beginning across a multitude of projects, organizations, departments, right? Then you become a more versatile player and you can specialize as you grow. But if you can get that experience capital, where you're really learning so many things, you will be invaluable to any organization.
Yeah, no, I love that advice. That second group is once you joined a company and you're a, individual contributor, and you want to take the career path of actually being responsible for a team of people, and get that first managerial role on an org chart. What advice would you have for them as they begin their leadership journey?
Read a ton of leadership books. Right? Read a ton of leadership books, take what resonates for you in there and leave the rest because you are your own leader. So don't try to just mimic what somebody did, right? You have to be your own authentic person, but that doesn't mean that you can't borrow from the greats, know? And so pick up those things, continue to invest in your learning and development. I think leaders have a duty and a responsibility to do that because now you are in a position of power, right? So continue to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. So important, lifelong learning. Any books come to mind that you would recommend for them?
Oh my God. So many. Like I've just got, it's like, what category do you want? I actually have a really great book for both of those demographics. It is not like an easy read. It's not a read that you're going to sit down. It's not like a novel, but it's called FYI. And it is all of the different competencies that you need to grow and excel in corporate America But what this book does, and it's also not a cheat book, but what this book does is it takes each competency and it tells you what that looks like if you are doing it well, what it looks like if you're doing it too much, and then it becomes a bad thing, what it looks like if the skill is underdeveloped. And so you can really, as an individual contributor, look at these things and say, my boss told me I need to have better collaboration. What does that even mean? Right?
Right.
Go to that page in the competency book and you can read what it looks like, right? My boss told me I need to have better executive presence. What? Go to the book. It gives you exact things that you can work on. Yep. And the FYI stands for your improvement.
Okay.
And it's a great read. I mean, it is expensive. It's like $85, but it's worth every penny. If you're a leader, it's really great to use with your team on performance reviews, right?
Yeah.
And when you're trying to coach them up.
Yeah.
So invest in that book.
Wow, that's fantastic. I read a lot also, but I'm not sure I've heard of that book. So that's,
and it's like I said, it's not a book you're going to be like, it's not, the 4-hour work week or how to be more productive, right? It's literally like an encyclopedia of competencies.
Yeah.
But I keep it out and I keep it as a reference for all of my coaching clients, for inside of my community and for myself when it's like, okay, this is feedback I've gotten. What do I do about it?
Yeah, no, I love that. Erica, you've been such a great guest. I'm so honored that you came on the Corporate Couch. I wish you a great rest of the day and a great 2025.
Thank you.
What a powerhouse Erica is, I'll tell you that.
Man, she was amazing.
Loved her. So fun. I believe she's the first guest out of whatever, 129, 30, 40, whatever we're at now, that used the word mofo during an episode. She quoted that, but like many of our guests, had no idea what the next career, next, rung on the ladder, what to do next. She was a personal trainer in college because it paid a lot of money.
Just because.
Yeah, and she got it, she was making a lot of money. And then I said, so what you worked out a lot? You ran? What was oh, no, I didn't do any of those things. I just became a personal trainer because of the money. I'm like, oh, there you go. I thought that was funny.
Paid for her college.
Yeah. And then, she goes, well, I hit a ceiling. I could only, unless I became the personal trainer of Oprah or some celebrity, I was going to be stuck at a certain level of pay, for the rest of my life. So I said, well, what's next? What's the closest I can do corporately? And she went into HR and really ascended very quickly from, an HR generalist to the chief people officer of a company. So I loved her story about, so she was a personal trainer running a wellness, some crazy number of people at Verizon, one of the regions. She was running 12 health and wellness centers, that 36 coordinators under her. They were serving 15,000 employees in those wellness centers. But what she learned about the political, reading the political tea leaves and the landscape, because she worked with executives, managers and IT, finance, HR, you name it, supply chain, whatever, at a big organization like Verizon, it really helped her navigate her career, which I thought was amazing that she could really learn that and embrace it at an early, in her early 20s and mid 20s, probably. Then I really love, she's a chief people officer. And then she started getting into this coaching and it really lit her up. She loved doing it. And I said, well, did you have an idea that, when you were chief people officer, you wanted to do something else and that was it? You were going to set a plan? She goes, no, I had no idea.
Just stumbled into whatever's next.
I asked her specifically with this return to work and companies saying that you have to be in 5 days a week again. I'd loved her thoughts on that. And she, didn't believe that you had to. We proved that we can work outside the home. And some people want to work at, in the office, and that's great, but have that flexibility. And she talked about, she can see job descriptions going away. And now she called it outcome descriptions, which I never heard that.
I love that
phrase
I
before.
love that.
Like, here's the outcomes we expect of you. And, I just thought that was amazing, because she's right. Like, somebody can do a job in 3 hours and get more done than somebody else with less experience and less skills would take 8 or more hours in. So why do you have to hang around all day? For what?
And I've been in situations like that. I can understand that.
Oh yeah. I mean, we were weaned on it, we worked at Sprint and now T-Mobile together. It's, they wanted you in the office, and they wanted you in the office for a long time per day.
You're Italian, right? Very obviously Italian.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. And, the stereotype about Italians is that they are always talking with their hands. They're always waving their arms around. And the joke is, if you ever want to get an Italian to shut up, you just tie his hands behind his back. And we don't show the video most of the time on the corporate couch, but I've just loved watching the video of Erica, because her hands were always flailing in the air. And I thought it was just adorable. I thought it was definitely part of her personality, part of her character, that she was always talking with her hands. Very, very animated, very interesting. I had the impression, you talk about her being a personal trainer, and then going into HR, and then going into people management, if you will. I think she could be successful in whatever she was trying.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. If she went into law, if she went into medicine, if she went into politics, she'd went into anything. She would, if she had an interest in it, she would be successful. Now, she said she specifically didn't get into nursing because she didn't like the blood and guts. I wrote that down, and I thought, well, that's probably not the best thing for you. But if she could have gotten over that, she would have been a wonderful nurse, and she would be able to do anything like that. I thought that one of the most telling things that she talked about, though, was when she talked about after she got her master's degree. And then she said, well, obviously, the next thing you do is you go get your PhD. And her mentor was challenging her on that. So, well, why do you want to get a PhD? And she said, because I want people to call me doctor.
Well, yeah, that was the next step.
It was
I got my
undergraduate,
graduate, and I get my doctorate.
It's just,
right?
It's just what you do, And she said, no, that's the exact wrong reason to get it. And she ended up going other direction. I went through something similar to that after I got my MBA, and I was kind of thinking about getting a PhD after that. And there were some family issues going on in my life at the time. My son had just been born, and so I decided, I'm going to set that aside for a while. Fast forward about 25 years later, and I find out that I'm working with people that are half my age that have a PhD in statistics, and essentially the same job title as I have. And I thought, well, man, they could have been calling me a doctor, but instead I'm calling this 30-year-old a doctor. And so I've had kind of mixed feelings on that. But I would agree that the absolute worst reason to be a doctor was just because it's the next thing on the list. It was a fascinating, very entertaining interview. I absolutely enjoyed it.
Yes, very nice. What leadership advice would you have based on Erica's conversation?
We are going to that great philosopher named Bill Murray, if you remember him. And one of the things that he said was this. He said, whatever you do, always give 100%, unless you're giving blood.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Corporate Couch. If you enjoy the podcast, I would love for you to take 2 minutes out of your day to rate us 5 stars and write a review. Please join me next week to learn from another great leader sharing their professional journey and insights.